Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Sumter County, Florida say that a 44-year-old wanted felon is facing a slew of new charges this week following a dramatic incident in which he allegedly crashed into a building, attempted to burglarize an apartment complex, and prompted a standoff with the SWAT team. According to reports, the situation began just before 4 a.m. on June 11th when the Sumter County Sheriff's Office received a call about a strange incident unfolding at the Sandalwood Apartments in the city of Wildwood. A man, later identified as 44-year-old Corey Michael Payton, had allegedly crashed a car into one of the complex's buildings, after which he began breaking into several of the apartments there. By the time officers arrived, Payton had apparently barricaded himself inside one of the second-story units and was refusing to come out. After he reportedly threatened to shoot at law enforcement, the SWAT team was called in and several neighboring residences were evacuated. The situation lasted for several hours, during which time police were able to establish Payton's identity, learning that he had an extensive criminal history that included 139 prior felony charges and 30 total felony convictions. They also discovered that a warrant had been issued for his arrest 2 days prior for violating the conditions of his supervised release in another burglary case. The dramatic incident finally came to an end when Payton allegedly agreed to surrender, though ended up diving out of a second-story window in an alleged escape attempt. He was tended to at the scene by emergency responders before being sent to a local hospital for further treatment. During a subsequent sweep inside the crime scene, officers discovered Payton's ankle monitor, which he apparently cut off during the standoff. At the time of this recording, the 44-year-old reportedly remains in the hospital. Upon his release, he is expected to be booked into the Sumter County Detention Center on charges of burglary to an occupied dwelling, burglary to a dwelling, and multiple counts of criminal mischief.
Representatives from the Orlando Police Department say that one of their officers has been relieved from duty and is facing several charges this week following a strange recent incident in which he was allegedly caught speeding by an officer from a different department and refused to pull over or cooperate. According to reports, the situation unfolded early in the afternoon on June 6th when a deputy with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office spotted an Orlando police SUV whip past him on a rural road. At the time, the Orlando cruiser's lights were not on, meaning that the officer inside was not on his way to the scene of an emergency. Yet, he was still traveling 80 miles per hour in a 45 zone. After turning around, the Seminole County deputy began pursuing the Orlando police officer, later identified as Alexander Shoney. According to the deputy, he needed to drive at speeds of over 100 miles per hour to catch up. However, even when he did, Shoney ignored the deputy's lights and sirens and refused to pull over. When Shoney finally did stop, he was immediately aggressive with the Seminole County deputy, demanding to know what was going on. Body cam footage of their brief exchange has since been released, in which Shoney can be heard angrily saying that he is on his way to work and refusing to hand over his driver's license. He then flees the scene in his vehicle while the deputy calls for backup. According to reports, Shoney was later arrested over the incident and is now facing charges including resisting an officer, reckless driving, and fleeing and eluding a law enforcement officer with active sirens. In a statement, Orlando police also announced that Shoney was relieved of duty pending an investigation.
Representatives from the Philadelphia Police Department say that a 34-year-old man is in critical condition this week, and an 18-year-old woman is lucky to be alive following an Uber ride that ended in disaster when the driver was hit in the head by a bullet. According to reports, the incident took place at around 11:15 p.m. on June 14th when the 34-year-old Uber driver picked up the 18-year-old female passenger in his Honda CR-V in North Philadelphia. They had made it just a few blocks and were traveling on Lehigh Avenue towards Broad Street when several gunshots rang out. While the 18-year-old was able to quickly duck down, avoiding a bullet that went through the vehicle's back window by mere inches, the 34-year-old driver wasn't so lucky. The bullet traveled through the back of his headrest, striking him in the back of the head. The 34-year-old kept driving for a few moments before losing control of the SUV, crossing the street, jumping a curve, and colliding with the utility pole. Miraculously, the 18-year-old passenger was uninjured, though the driver was sadly found unresponsive at the scene and is not expected to survive. During a subsequent investigation, authorities recovered 6 spent shell casings on a sidewalk near the crash scene. However, at the time of this recording, police say they aren't sure whether the vehicle was specifically targeted or whether the driver was hit by a stray bullet. The 18-year-old says that the 34-year-old was driving appropriately at the time of the shooting and that they weren't involved in any road rage incidents or anything else that might explain the violence. Neither she nor the driver have yet been identified by name. The situation is still developing.
Representatives from Oklahoma's Tulsa Police Department say that 3 people have been arrested in connection with a recent robbery this week, one which was allegedly organized by the apparent victim as part of a harebrained scheme to get out of work. The incident began on June 5th when police were called to a gas station convenience store at East 61st Street and South Lewis Avenue with reports of a robbery. When officers arrived, they were greeted by the store's clerk, Isaiah Jones, who said that he had been held up by an unknown man. The man had passed him a note threatening to shoot unless he handed over the business's money, so Jones said that he had complied. Though police initially had no reason to doubt Isaiah's version of events, that all changed 3 days later when they tracked down the alleged robber, Stephen Jones. Jones admitted to carrying out the crime, but stated that he had actually been hired to commit the robbery by a friend named Aaliyah Locke. Locke was tracked down and arrested herself on an outstanding warrant the following day, leading to the final missing piece of the puzzle. She said that she had been hired by Isaiah Jones, who paid her after the robbery had been carried out. Text messages between her and the store clerk backed up her story. Apparently, though, money wasn't the actual motive behind the crime. Instead, in the messages, Isaiah reportedly stated that he wanted his friends to rob the convenience store because he was tired and wanted to leave work early. All 3 suspects have since been arrested, though so far only Isaiah and Stephen Jones have been charged. Isaiah is now facing charges of embezzlement and conspiracy to commit a felony, while Stephen Jones has been charged with conspiracy to commit embezzlement as well as a weapons charge. In a post to the department's Facebook page, the Tulsa police joked about the incident, writing, quote, "Our human resources department, and likely every HR department in the world, would like to advise people that this is not the recommended way to leave work early."
Authorities in Wise County, Texas say that a 45-year-old man is facing murder charges this week following a gruesome discovery at a rural property that he shared with his wife and children. According to reports, the incident began on June 12th when authorities were contacted by the brother-in-law of a woman named Kimberly Kellum. The man informed police that no one had seen or heard from Kimberly or her 11-year-old daughter for several months. When officers traveled to the family's home in the city of Decatur, they found the place abandoned. Further communications with the missing 11-year-old school revealed that she hadn't been enrolled there since 2022. Upon further investigation, police were able to track down Kimberly's husband, Robert Moriarty. The 45-year-old was living at a Dallas hotel with he and his wife's 2 other children, ages 3 and 10. Investigators also learned that Moriarty had just recently finished a probation term for pleading guilty to 2 counts of abandoning or endangering a child with criminal negligence in 2019. When Moriarty was first questioned about his wife and eldest daughter's whereabouts, he claimed that he didn't know where they were. However, according to police, he eventually revealed the awful truth. He allegedly explained that he had killed the missing woman about 5 or 6 months back and had hidden their bodies in the garage of their home. Sadly, police were able to confirm this during a second search of the property, during which both of the victims' remains were recovered. At the time of this recording, few additional details have been released by authorities about the case. So far, detectives have not speculated as to a motive, and the victims' causes of death are still being investigated. It's unclear why no one reported Kimberly or her daughter missing earlier, though police did say that the surviving children were scared to death of their father. Moriarty is now in custody and is facing charges including murder, capital murder of a person older than 10 but younger than 15, and tampering with/fabricating physical evidence with intent to impair a human corpse.
A bizarre recent burglary case in Vancouver, British Columbia seems to be wrapping up with an unexpectedly happy ending for everyone involved this week, after the suspect apparently apologized for his actions and the victim managed to get a bit of well-earned buzz for her bakery business. According to reports, the strange case began near the end of May when the unidentified suspect smashed his way into Sweet Something, a bakery located in Vancouver's Dunbar neighborhood. In footage captured by the store's surveillance cameras, the man could be seen standing around outside of the business for some time before first slamming up against the front entrance and then kicking his way through the glass door. Once inside, it appears the suspect was in no hurry. He explored the bakery, sat down for some time, investigated the business's items, and even snapped a few selfies with the store's phone, wearing a pair of bright orange sunglasses. It seems that he was also concerned about the mess he had made during his entrance, as eventually he found a mop and bucket and attempted to clean up the glass on the floor. When he finally left the bakery over an hour later, the only thing he took with him was a box of 6 chocolate champagne cupcakes. Needless to say, when the business's owner, Emma Irvine, reviewed the surveillance video of the entire incident the next day, she was both confused and exasperated. After reporting the break-in to police, she also posted the strange footage to social media detailing what had happened, which quickly went viral. One of those who saw it was apparently the suspect himself, who promptly reached out to apologize profusely. In addition to the apology, Irvine says that the man offered to pay for the cupcakes he stole, as well as all of the damage to her business. He also promised to throw in the orange sunglasses he wore during the break-in. In an interview with the news outlet the CBC, Irvine said that she felt the man was sincere and that she has since asked police not to press charges. She also stated that the incident has inspired a new cupcake design at her bakery, one that features an edible replica of the iconic orange sunglasses and is aptly named Crime of Passion.
Authorities in Annapolis, Maryland say that 3 people are dead this week and 3 others have been injured following a tragic shooting, an attack that was allegedly prompted by a parking dispute between neighbors. The situation began at around 7:50 p.m. on June 11th when police were called to the 1000 block of Paddington Place just off of Edgewood Road. Officers arrived to find 6 people suffering from gunshot wounds. 3 were rushed to local hospitals where they were eventually stabilized, though sadly, 3 others were declared dead at the scene. The deceased victims have since been identified as 25-year-old Christian Segovia, as well as father and son, 55-year-old Nicholas Morales and 27-year-old Mario Morales Ruiz. According to reports, the deadly incident began over a parking dispute between the victims and one of their neighbors, Shirley Smith. That evening, Mario Morales had been hosting a party, though had left his residence when Shirley complained that someone's car was blocking her driveway. This apparently led to an argument during which Shirley's son, 43-year-old Charles Robert Smith, arrived at the residence. At some point, Smith allegedly pulled out a weapon, shooting Mario and Christian Segovia multiple times. Witnesses say that the 43-year-old then stood over Mario, shooting him several more times as he lay on the ground. When terrified family members and friends ran over to see what had happened, Smith reportedly retrieved a second weapon from inside his mother's home, firing outside of a window and hitting 4 more people. One of those was Mario's father, Nicholas. Smith was arrested at the scene of the shooting and is now facing 3 counts of second-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of first-degree assault, as well as gun violations. In an attempt to explain Smith's violent actions, his attorney said in a statement to the media that the 43-year-old was diagnosed with PTSD after serving in the military. At the time of the shooting, he was supposed to be on 5 different medications, though allegedly had not taken these medications for several days. However, other reports state that there were long-standing tensions between the victims and the Smith family. Both households had previously filed petition for peace orders against each other and had made numerous complaints to local law enforcement. At least one of those calls was reportedly made by Charles Smith himself. At the time of this recording, he remains in custody.
Authorities in Claremont County, Ohio say that they are investigating the aftermath of a truly horrific crime this week after a 32-year-old father allegedly lined up his 3 young sons and fatally shot them in the yard of their home. According to reports, the incident began at around 4:15 p.m. on June 15th, when officers at the Claremont County Sheriff's Office received a frantic 911 call from a 34-year-old woman in Monroe Township. The woman was screaming and said that her babies had been shot. Just a couple of minutes later, a second 911 call came in. this time from a passing motorist in the same area. The driver said that they had just witnessed a girl running down the street, yelling that her father was killing people. When officers arrived at the property where gunshots were heard, located on the 1900 block of Laurel-Lindale Road, they found the 32-year-old homeowner, Chad Doerman. He was sitting on the stoop of the residence with a rifle. In the yard of the property were his 3 young sons, ages 3, 4, and 7, all of whom had suffered serious gunshot wounds. Sadly, none of the boys could be saved and were pronounced dead at the scene. Doerman was taken place into custody without issue, while his wife, who had placed the initial 911 call, was taken to a local hospital to be treated for a gunshot wound to her hand. While almost nothing is known about what motivated the unfathomable crime, authorities say that Doerman admitted under questioning that he had been planning it for several months. That afternoon, he had lined up his 3 sons in the yard before shooting them one by one. Disturbingly, it's alleged that one of the boys managed to make a run for it into a nearby field that was hunted down by his father, who brought him back to the scene before shooting him with his 2 brothers. Doerman is now facing 3 charges of aggravated murder in connection with the incident. He is being held on $20 million bond. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously. Thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.